Hello, welcome to what I hope is going to be a series of new videos about synthesizers. I've done quite a few videos on the Akai MPC-1, basically because it's a piece of gear that could do some explanation. But actually, my most watched videos tend to be ones where I'm just waffling on, not actually trying to teach people general information. So I thought, well, okay, we could do that. So I thought I'd do a series of videos on pieces of gear in my studio and why they're in my studio and what I like and don't like about them, as people always seem to like the negative things. The joys of the human condition. So I thought we'd start off with my Desert Island synth, the Korg MS2000. And you can actually still buy this synth engine, or a very close approximation of it, in there's Korg's just released a new version of it. I think it's the Microkorg, or is it Mini Korg? Can't remember now. But anyway, there's a new version of it just come out, and it's basically the same synth engine as this synth that came out in the year 2000. It actually came out in 99, I think. I actually bought it in 99, I believe. I bought it new. I was just so excited when it came out. I've always really liked Korg synths. They tend to come from a bit of a different angle than other people. And but they actually do make musician synths, unlike quite a few of them, which I won't go into details. And they always tend to be musical synths as well. There's, especially these days, you can get an awful lot of gear that can make some really interesting noises, but doesn't necessarily make good music. Nothing wrong with that, but because there's a lot of people that have synthesizers not to even try and make music. They just like the whole thing, especially if you're into modular and stuff. It's the whole experience of doing the process. It's not necessarily the end result. Whereas for me, it's a bit of both. I love synthesizers. I haven't learned to play guitar. I do play bass guitar, not very well, but I've always just amazed by the stuff you can get out of these little boxes. My first synth was a Korg MS20, brand new, in 1984. Gives you a hint of how old I am. And and I'm just agog even now what you can get out of a box. And of course, modern synths just blow the capabilities of the MS20 out of the water. Doesn't mean they're any better synthesizers. They've got more capabilities. And of course, obviously, these days with digital synths, it's mind-boggling what can be done. But at the end of the day, it's whether it suits what you want to do. And a lot of these highly technical, complex synths, actually one of Korg one springs to mind. I have the Korg Wave State, and I actually do not think that's a musician synthesizer in the slightest, and I hardly ever use it in a song. I have used it, but I don't use it much, and I definitely don't play it very much, because it's not actually a musician synthesizer. It's obviously a computer nerd developed it. So it sort of contradicts what I said earlier, but there you go. I'm a human being, things are contradictory in there. Right. Anyway, enough waffling on. The Korg MS2000, like I say, it's my Desert Island synth. That is really because it's a synth I know well. I know people watching this sort of video won't want to hear this, but you're actually better off having one piece of gear that you know really well than shitloads of gear that you hardly know what you're doing with. And some of you will say, "Oh, well, that's all very well, because you've got loads of gear." Well, actually, yeah, you don't know that. But the other thing is, I've collected it since 1984. Here we are, 40 years later, almost, well, past the date actually, because it was the summer of '84 I bought my first synthesizer, and I've kept it. And I've also, the vast majority of my gear has been considered purchases. Nothing's been bought on impulse and just gone, "Ooh," when I've seen a YouTube video or whatever. Does it fit with your studio and how you're going to work? And there has, and obviously sometimes you make a mistake. You think it will, but it won't. My favourite one on that was many years ago. I bought an Roland MC202, which had basically a little sequencer built in. It was an SH101, a monosynth, brilliant for bass and stuff. It had a built-in sequencer, but you had to program it. You couldn't play it in. You had to program it in, and it just drove me nuts. But I actually managed to sell that for a profit about 5 years later, so that was all right. I do mean profit as in more money, not the synthesizer. Although I had a Pro 1, and my Profit Pro 1, again, I bought quite cheap because analog synths were out of fashion, and I used it for years, but I had a MIDI CD interface to connect it to the rest of my studio, and that drove me nuts. It kept not working properly and kept not doing things I expected, and it just drove me nuts. So I actually stopped using the Pro 1. It just drove me bonkers. And then and I sold it, for a lot more money than I paid for it. Literally 10 times. It was literally 10 times what I paid for it. And I sold the MIDI CD interface separately for a bit more money. And then a couple of years later, Behringer bought out the Pro 1 clone, which I very happily added to my studio. So I'm very pleased with it. I still don't use it that much because I've got other synths, and so many of what you do in your music is habit, isn't it? It is quite important sometimes to challenge your habits, but you've got to realise it is a habit. Right, sorry, I've strayed off the MS2000 again. So I'm not going to. None of these videos are going to go into huge detail about the technicalities, because I don't care about the technicalities. To be honest, does the synth do something I want it to do? So people go, "Oh, this is a piece of shit because it's only got 4 voices." Yeah, so most of the time you only play 3 notes. It's certainly not important for, say, if you go play the bass sound. Yeah, oh, whoopie-doo. So you've got 4 notes, makes no bloody difference at all. I find that sort of thing really annoying. More often than not, the people that make those sorts of comments don't actually produce any music, so I don't get excited about it. I like I say, I love this machine, and it does things I want it to do. So, and I can program it. It was one of the first synths that had a modulation sequencer. So these 16 knobs here aren't a sequencer in the traditional sense. They're actually a modulation sequencer. So you could have a sound. Sorry, let me get a different sound. Just bear with me a moment because I haven't practiced this at all. All my videos, all these sort of videos, I try to do as live as much as possible. So this one here. I thought it used the modulation sequencer, because if the modulation sequencer is working, the lights flow on there. So let's see if I can find one that definitely uses it. Sorry, bear with me a moment. Yeah. So what you've got, actually, I can use this. You've got banks. I'm on bank A. You won't be able to see the screen, but it doesn't really matter. I'm on bank A there, and it goes up to bank H. But half of bank H is the vocoder patches, and I have literally never used the vocoder on this synthesizer. I've never really got my head around vocoders, to be honest. I've never managed to use them in anything. Ah, there we go. I hope this will show up on the video, but this pad is flexing and changing. Partly it's the there's modulation on the filter, but so just let me cover the light to see if that helps. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. So the modulation sequence, that's the modulation sequence doing stuff. And there's actually 3 lanes on the modulation sequence, so you can actually do 3 lots of things on it. So lots of complexity available. But at its heart, if you ignore that bit, this is a bog standard 2 oscillator analog synth in style. The fact that it's actually what's modernly called a virtual analog, it is literally a virtual analog. There is no analog bit to it at all, but it is very much an analog synthesizer in presentation and how you use it. So, and then you get, like I say, you get the modulation sequence that brings a whole different kettle of fish into the sound design thing. I have to say I don't do that much, and I tend to do fairly simple stuff with modulation sequencing, because when I sit down and start doing music, I don't want to be faffing around in the details of things. I want to be doing the piece of music. I sometimes do sit down, and this synth is one of the ones I do it with the most. I will sit down and just program my sound. But for instance, a bass sound, for instance, it tends not to be very complicated. And if you want, and if you do any sound that's really complicated, and I'm just trying to see if I can find one, which I'm struggling to do at the moment. If you've got any really complicated sound, it can actually be quite hard to use, or it won't fit in the mix and that sort of thing. I think this might be one. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting sound, but whether I think it's one that was on it when I bought it, and I may have changed it slightly. But it's not. You know, might use it as to end a song or start a song or something, but won't really fit in the mix. Not really the best example of that sort of thing, but it is an example, so it'll do. This is one of my favourite pads. I'm sorry, just to point it out, there was no problems with just 4 notes, was there really? Partly because I have to say I did cheat a little bit, because what I did, I made sure I didn't play legato on the high melody notes. You know, I lifted from one note completely before I pressed the next key down, just to make sure I didn't pinch one of the notes of the chord. Which, again, you just get into these habits. When you know your gear, just get into these habits. So that's where you switch your mod sequencer on and off. And if you're really into your programming, you do it all on the screen. So I think, if I remember rightly, because I have to say it's been a little while, because it was actually packed in a box for 2 years, because I had no studio for just over 2 years when I moved house. I had one piece of gear out, and that was the Korg wave state for me to learn to program it, and that got quite tedious. I think you can program it live now I think about it, sorry. But basically, you bring it up on the screen, you go into your steps. I'm not going to go into all of it now because I didn't practice this before the video. And then you can set you can set it with the knob, the level of whatever you want that to be on the knob, and then you select which of the 3 channels of the sequencer on the sequencer knob. Sorry, sequencer button. And on or off. There's a portmanteau on the front, which on the front panel. I think quite a lot of synthesizers do not have this. It's buried in a menu somewhere, and actually, it's so important, I think. Yeah, it just gives you so many more possibilities when playing a synth live, especially on lead lines. It's not so drastic for other things, but on lead lines, it can be really expressive to just keep turning the portmanteau up and down. Really quite nice. That sound may have been a bit quiet on the recording. I hope it isn't. Right. Yeah, stop messing with that. This is what happens when I'm in the studio. I tend to get interested and start messing with something because it's interesting. It's got a built-in arpeggiator, and again, lots of buttons on the front. The latch is a separate button, so that let's get a different sound. So just in case you didn't know what latch was. Then you've got range. So I'll just stop that. You've got the range, how many octaves. It rotates around up to 4 octaves, and then type, including random, which is what it was just doing then. You've got trigger, which plays all of them, so it's actually in effect playing the chord stab. And then you've got up, down, alternate 1, which I believe is up and down, playing the note once to each end, and the note 2, which is playing the top note twice. So because an irregular arpeggio would be. So you can see very different, very good, very handy for bass lines actually. Just to switch between the two, it can be quite good for bass lines. So, if you can't tell, I'm quite into my bass lines. And again, nice and on the front panel. So again, you can mess with it live, as it were. Quite handy. It was actually my best arpeggiator for years until I got a Novation Ultra Nova, and that arpeggiator is just on another planet. It's just brilliant. I mean, this one's probably a 7 out of 10. compared to that one, it would have been a 9 or 10 out of 10 for me until I got the Ultranova. This, like I say, but this was my best arpeggiator, and probably about 7 out of 10. And I'd give the Ultranova arpeggiator a 9.5 out of 10. It doesn't get a 10 out of 10 because occasionally it's a bit slow at picking up the MIDI tempo when you're giving it the tempo over MIDI. It can be quite interesting, but it's but not always what you want. So, and it doesn't do it consistently either. So, but there you go. Virtual patching is one of the big things about the MS2000. So you've got choice of sources, and again, all beautifully on the front panel, so you can see envelope 1, envelope 2, LFO1, LFO2, velocity. So the keys the keys are velocity sensitive. Excuse me. Keyboard tracking, so obviously it'll go change with pitch or change with the note. MIDI 1 and 2, so control data coming in over MIDI, and then excuse me. And then the destination. So you've got pitch, oscillator 2 pitch on its own, oscillator 1 control 1, and I've forgotten what that actually means. I think because it does do something else that as well. But the amount of noise in the sound, filter cutoff, which you can see is at the moment. The keyboard tracking is doing the filter cutoff, and then you can also do the amp. The pan, and I've only got a couple of synths that mess around with pan very much, and this is one of them. And then the LFO2 frequency. So again, you could change the second if you had the LFO say on Bravado, and then you change the pitch with the tracking of the. You could make it oscillate faster. You can make the pitch oscillate faster as you went higher up the keyboard. You can do that sort of thing. And you've got 4 of those. You've got patch 1, patch 2, patch 3, and patch 4. And you see again with the lights and everything, it's all clear as day on the front of the screen. You know, this is where Korg tends to be so good. I have to say, what's the monologue? I didn't buy the mini log, but I've got the monologue, and I was a bit surprised it wasn't a bit more user friendly than it is, because I'm so used to Korgs being so user friendly. You know, because I mean, it's there, it's just right there in your face. Okay, you've got to fiddle around a bit to program it, but it's not difficult, and you don't need to read the manual if you haven't played with it for a while, which is always one of my signs of a good front panel. So some people might think this is a small keyboard. I actually have a master keyboard that's 5 octaves for my studio, so, and I usually play it. Because I have an Akai MPC as a centre of my studio, that master keyboard goes into that, and then obviously that can send out MIDI to all the keyboards in my studio. And so I rarely actually directly play this. And if I'm recording it, I'll record it on my master keyboard. But I record the MIDI, not the audio. Then I can tweak things if I want to later quite easily. So yes, we've got, what is it, 1, 2, 3, just over 3 octave keyboard, but it's very easy just to change, and again you can do it on the fly. Get a different sound. Oh, that's a slow pad. We won't be here all day if we wait for that one. And that one. So go down an octave. That is the lowest octave. Sorry, we can go up an octave or 2 then. So that covers all the MIDI note octaves basically. The other thing I was going to demonstrate with this one is you've also got a distortion button. I can't remember if I think you can go in and change it, but I don't remember ever doing so. It's a bit more subtle than, especially for those of you who are used to the Arturia bruting, or I've forgotten what to call it now. But I've got a mini brute too, and it's got something on it that I think beast mode or whatever. You turn a knob, and basically it tends to be fairly disruptive. And one of the Beringer synths I've got does that as well. And this one's a bit milder. I usually use it just to beef up the sound a bit, especially because sometimes in a mix, if it's getting a little bit lost, just push that button and it's a bit louder in the mix, basically, because obviously it adds quite a bit of treble from the distortion. Um, excuse me. All this gubbins on here is just telling you the various parameters and things, and some of that is via the menu in the screen, but not much of it. And as you've probably gathered, most of it that you need to get at is on the front panel. So you've got the mixer here for the noise and the two oscillators. You've got a low pass filter, which you can have as 24 or 12 pole, and then you've also got a band pass filter, which can be or a high pass filter, which are 12 pole, and you can also do formant shifts as well, which we'll talk about those another day. Should be here all day. That's the level for the amp. That's your the pan. So you've actually got a direct knob on the front panel. So again, if you were doing stereo and live, or doing a live stereo recording, you could just twiddle with that if you want to do some sort of effect somewhere in the song. This is what affects it. It changes the volume. So it's now on gate mode because the light's on in the button, or it's on envelope 2 when the light's off. And there's these 4 knobs are envelope 2, these 4 knobs are envelope 1, and they're both full ADSR envelopes. Not my favourite envelopes. My favourite envelopes are on the Casio CZ101. I love those envelopes, but these are much easier to deal with, straight in front of you with their own buttons and knobs and things. The only other thing really I want to talk about, there is an audio in, which again I hardly ever touch. In fact, I don't remember the last time I did that. Maybe I might have even just done it when it was new. Not that much of an experimental musician, if you haven't caught on to that by now. But one of the interesting things that tends to get commented on is the power knob on a MS2000 is also the volume knob. So it's now off. I have to turn it on, and then I usually have them about 8 or 9. Never do full blast, just to give a little bit of headroom on things. And then this is a string sound I've used in quite a few songs. Actually, I had to stop myself from using it. It's not turned up for doing the recording. When you play that loud and your ribs actually vibrate, it's lovely. And it's really nice up the high too. That is actually A1 on my, because when the synth starts up, it starts on A1, and and so I saved that sound there. It wasn't where it used to be, and I had tweaked it. It was one of the presets that came with the synth, but I tweaked it slightly, and I saved it there deliberately so that it was the sound that was on when the synth booted up. And like I say, I had to ban myself from using it because I used it a lot. One of the little things I do, and I started it because of the MS2000, and the sound out, because obviously you can tweak sounds, and none of the presets are set because you can alter them and save the alterations. They're just using memories. And one of the things I do is, like this one here has got an exclamation mark on the end of the name. So it says ana strings, so analog strings, exclamation mark. The exclamation mark tells me I've used it in a song, so don't edit it. So any sound, and I started doing that on the MS2000 just because I was having such a whale of a time, and there's 16 times whatever F is about, what's that, 7th, 8th letter, something like that. Anyway, there's a lot of memories. There's it's close to 100 memories, and you can't remember which sound you've used and not used, and with electronic music, quite often the sound you're using is really, really important to the sound, to the song. So, so I don't want to lose it. And some songs are written around a sound as well, quite often. I've got some songs where they just wouldn't exist if it wasn't that for that particular sound that was playing. Lounge organ is an organ sound I used quite a bit until I got Sorry, I like that one. I used it quite a lot until I got I have a EMU 19-inch racks box that's got some chips in it with sounds, and I got a chip with loads of organ sounds in it, and so I weaned myself off this organ sound to use some other ones, but I use this a lot in songs for a few years as well. Again, I don't think it will come over quite over in the recording, but you know, the low end of that is quite thunderous when you turn it up. I've obviously got the volume down a bit in the studio because I don't want to overload the microphone on the camera. So, this is just a simple lead sound. So it was a preset, and I think I did tweak it slightly. But you know, it's turning the wheel, so. So yeah, it makes a real difference. The wheel's basically on the filter cut off, so just something different to use rather than just putting vibrator on. You know, it's quite interesting. I think I'm not even sure I didn't write the song around that sound, or had a really deep bass song that I then used that lead on because I thought it was interesting. This is another one where I wrote a song around this sound, so it was quite a bit slower than this. So this is actually demonstrating the Arpeggiator doing the different styles. So this is random. So that's in effect just doing a chord. It's called trigger. That was up. This is down. So this is alternate one, so I think this is up and down. And then this is alt 2, where I think you get the 2 at either end of the arpeggio, 2 high notes and 2 low notes instead of just the one. I'm distracting myself as I tend to do. So just see if there's any other. I quite like this lead sound. So again, you're controlling that change with the modulation wheel. Very nice lead sound. That I like that. I only use it on one song because it's so distinctive. This is a pad I used on a few different songs. Oh, hang on. So that's supposed to be an electric piano, but is it really, is it? But it sounds nice. I think I used it as a bass sound on a song, if I remember rightly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I used it as a bass sound, but what I did, I just turned the release down a little bit. Yeah. I think that's what I did. So that's been used as a bass sound on one of my songs somewhere. Just looking for ones where I put an exclamation mark so I can got some idea what I might have done with them. I use that as an intro to a song. That's a good demonstration of the filter and the noise. Let's go to a different bank. Oh yeah, I use this one as the main, what now be called a pluck sound in a lot of songs, but also the bass. Yeah, quite fun. See, this is how I can lose loads of time in the studio. I'll just sit there doing things like that, but sometimes it starts the song. Okay, so sound for the arpeggiator. That's been used in a song somewhere. It was a long time ago now. I don't remember what I did with it. Haven't got the latch on, so it's gone as soon as I stop. Oh, this is one of the very first sounds I used when I bought the synth. Definitely better at the top end. That, yeah, I definitely use it as a lead sound. I remember it was very early on. And again, the modulations on the modulation wheel. Right, I will stop doing that because I could do that all day. Right. This is a sound I haven't used yet. Nondescript, but see, you need nondescript sound sometimes because you don't want the sound to. You want it to blend in with other sounds. It's not being on its own that matters. You just hang on to these things. There's no point in getting rid of them. I actually wrote this bass sound, or designed this bass sound. But I haven't used it yet. Turn the distortion off. So you can see what I mean about it adding quite a lot of treble and obviously making it quite a lot louder as well in this instance. It's always worth pressing the distortion button just to see if it's something interesting. And again, the same thing. I do the same thing on the Mini Brute and other synthesizers I've got on it. Oh, I use that as the digital noise on the song once. So, one thing I didn't mention was about the split keyboard. You can split the keyboard. This was used actually on a song I've had published. I don't know which sound it is now. I did actually play chord when I recorded the song. It's called Alone on the Road. One day I might do a YouTube video for it, but I haven't bothered yet. But that was actually one of the only time I've done a CD. That was one of it was the lead song on the CD. That was the song that made me want to do a CD. Of course, that was just as MP3s started taking over the world. So my CD didn't do very well really, but hey, I enjoyed the experience and enjoyed going in the studio to record the songs as well. So. Right. Oh, this is one I've literally just used today. I'm not playing as well as I should do, partly because I'm thinking about what to say and partly because my hands are cold. Yeah, anyway, I'll use that in a song today. I've just finished literally today. Well, anyway, I think that's probably enough on that. If you've got any questions or anything else you'd like to know about the Korg MS2000, because I'm not sure I told you that much about it really, please feel free to put something in the comments. If you think this was a bit too long and waffly, please let me know, because it'll help me think about what to do for the next video. But I hope you thought it was interesting, and thank you for watching. Bye.